In this video, I'm going to show you the incredible blitz game played between two of the very best blitz players in the world, Hikaru Nakamura playing with white against Hans Niemann. And this is a big clash between the two American stars. The game is played online on chess.com, Title Tuesday, favorite tournament of many strong grandmasters. And here we get to see the big clash, and it's going to be very, very interesting, I can tell you. So make sure to watch till the very end, as some dramatic things are happening. And of course, you got to subscribe to the channel as well. Let's have a look. Hikaru goes for 1 e4, and Hans played the Karo Kan, knight c3, d5, knight f3, the so-called two knights variation. Bishop g4, h3, attacking the bishop. Bishop takes knight, queen takes back, and black places the pawns on the light squares. This is typical strategy, so he has a good dark squared bishop. g3, knight d7, and here the queen goes back to e2. This is all pretty standard, but it's a kind of a sideline. And well, here there are various ways to continue. One of the ideas of white's last move is that if black is going to play knight f6, you can attack it immediately with the move e5, so the queen does support the pawn going there. So instead, black decides to advance the pawn himself, d4. Attacking the knight on c3, and the knight goes back to d2. And this is interesting, as this position has occurred only twice before, according to the Mega database. Only in 2 games of Hikaru Nakamura playing with the white pieces. He played it in 2022 against Darius Svirch, who played here the move g6. Later, last year, in fact, he played it against Virusha, who played here the move bishop d6. And Hans goes for ambitious move h5. It's an interesting idea, so that if white would continue with, let's say, a random move like d3, then black wants to play here the move h4 to tickle this pawn. And if white advances the pawn, then black is going to place the pawn on e5. And here, this bishop on f1 is really bad. There are ideas for black to gain control over the dark squares, so that's something white should definitely avoid. So after the move h5, white should stop the h-pawn, and he does it with the move h4. Now, black grabs some space in the center, and of course the knight on d1 also doesn't look great, so white definitely needs some time to entangle here. Well, bishop goes to h3, so this is now a nice open diagonal, one of the drawbacks of black's of this particular setup. Now the bishop is looking great here. Bishop d6, d3, knight e7. White challenges the pawn on d4 with the move c3, and black just supports it with the move c5. And after castling kingside, the knight from e7 goes to c6 to support that pawn on d4. So here still white has the bishop pair, but the position is very closed, and white also got to think about how to get its knight into play, where to develop the bishop, and what to do with the rooks. On which side of the board is white going to play? That's the question. Well, here first, Hikaru decides to close the position with the move c4. I'm not sure that was really needed, and in general, it's probably better to maintain the tension, trying to open the position for the bishops at some point. But okay, with the move c4, okay, black also is having a hard time to come up with a constructive plan. So queen e7 played, white goes for the move a3. So there are always ideas to go, let's say, like bishop d2, rook b1, and get the pawn to b4. And black wants to block the position with a5. White goes b3, g6. Now bishop goes to g5, attacking the queen. Black goes f6. The bishop goes back to d2. So now, okay, like all the 16 pawns are still on the board. We are not expecting more exchanges in the near future. But black also got to think what to do with the king. Now, very interesting things are happening, as Hans played here the move king d8. He's not going to castle either side. He just wants to put king on c7. Now white goes for the move f4. This is the pawn break Hikaru had been playing for. And now after king c7, he brings the knight to f2, but still the knight is not looking that great at all. Rook a f8. So here, black is even looking for ideas to take over the initiative on the king side, because it could be that the white king is becoming quite vulnerable. Rook a e1. Now the king goes back to b8. King g2, and well, interesting moment, because here Hans just plays it too softly with the move bishop c7, but this was the big moment to take on f4, because after taking back with the pawn, if you take back with the bishop, then black does get access to the e5 square with one of its minor pieces, particularly a knight could be doing pretty well on that square. But after g takes f4, now you want to go back with the bishop to c7 and prepare a move like g6, g5 to prove that the white king is quite exposed. Well, it was not played, and the difference is becoming clear very soon, because after bishop c7, white closes the position here with the move f5. If black is going to take, you can just take back, and you have a nice grip on the f5 square, or you can even take with the knight. It's just a matter of taste, so that the knight can come to e4. Well, anyway, g5 was played. Now h takes g, pawn takes g, and white plays g4. So supporting the pawn on f5, attacking the pawn on h5, but now both sides are having a protected passed pawn. The position is completely blocked on the king side, and therefore the attention shifts to the other side of the board. Rook b1, bishop d6. Now white is looking for a pawn break with b4. Black doesn't want to allow it, so all these pieces are controlling the b4 square. Rook b2, and of course now the king is not that well placed on b8. It goes to c7. After rook b1, the rook comes over to a8, so it's really hard for white to get in b4. If that happens, the a file for the black rook will be opened. King h1, and now a new phase of the game starts with a lot of maneuvering, in fact. So the knight goes to f6, the rook on g8 protects the pawn on g5, knight goes to h3, so you're attacking the pawn on g5 with both the bishop and the knight. Knight goes to h7, queen to d1, rook a6, bishop e2, rook a8, queen c1, b6. Not much is happening, but both sides seem to be doing reasonably well here. Let's see what's going to happen in the next couple of moves, as white is trying to improve its position, but it's not easy at all. Black is also making some moves with the king. Now the bishop goes to g1 with the idea probably to go bishop h2 at some point, and here Hans feels like, okay, this is the moment to go a4. But this is a very ambitious move, and not sure it was needed here at all, but he's looking for its own opportunities, so that at some point he may even be able to generate some pressure against the pawn on a3. Bishop d1, hitting the rook on a4, rook goes back, bishop f2, rook ge8, a4, and okay, white is looking for the right moment to strike with a5, but here first the knight comes to b4. This is a nice square for the knight. Rook a3, queen c6. So the pawn on a4 is still defended, but white's pieces are forced to keep it defended as well. Now, look what's happening. White went here for the move queen b1. And here Hans goes for knight f6, but both players missed that now the pawn on g5 is hanging. Or, well, perhaps, maybe black's idea was here to take on g4, so that if you take on g4, then you take on g5, the king side is open, and this is not bad for black at all. But after knight takes g4, you have knight e6 as an intermediate check. So the king got to move, and otherwise you you lose the knight on g4. So well, this is not looking great at all. There are still crazy ideas by sacrificing the queen, for instance, but after doing that you're getting two pieces. But this, frankly speaking, this can never be sufficient compensation. So mistake by both sides. King h2, knight h7. Played, so protecting the pawn again. And now this maneuvering phase just continues. Both sides are not really doing anything. Here we see, interestingly, that the black king is going to be evacuated to the other side of the board, because likely at some point something is going to happen on the queen side, not on the king side. Queen e2, rook back, bishop d2. So white's also improving its pieces. The knight is back to its blockading square, but it's far away from where the action is taking place. The king goes there, so Hikaru is going back and forth with the pieces. Now bishop goes back to d1. It's not really clear what Hikaru is doing, but okay, he is not doing too badly here. And don't forget, it's a blitz game. It's Title Tuesday. The time format is 3+1. So even in time trouble, you always get this bonus second. So you cannot lose on time. Here, at this point, there is this option to take on b4, which was not done. Looks perhaps a little bit strange to do so. So white went for the move bishop e2, bishop e7, queen b1. So back and forth, not much is happening still. Okay, with knight c2, white was attacking the knight on b4. Knight goes back. And white also got to keep the pawn on a4 defended. Bishop d8. Black is also protecting the pawn on b6. Knight f8. Knight goes to f3. So now the bishop and the knight, they are kind of stuck defending the pawn weaknesses. Knight to b4 again. Bishop e1. Bishop e7. Bishop f2. Bishop d8. Okay, no progress here at this point. Now, pawn on e5 requires permanent attention. Knight f8. Knight e1. Queen c6. Knight c2. Okay, finally there's some interaction again between the two knights. And well, if you do take on c2, you're going to take back with the bishop. Now white's plan is to get the bishop back to e1 and try to break with a5. So this annoying knight is no longer there. Okay, this didn't happen in the game. Black didn't want to cooperate. And here, the fascinating moment is that Hans had only 4 seconds with black, whereas Nakamura was still having around 20 seconds on the clock. But this is the moment in the game where Hans is sensing that there is an opportunity. It may not be fully correct, but it's a possibility you normally don't often get. So he goes for this insane idea with knight takes d3, sacrificing the knight. And after rook takes d3, there's queen takes e4. It's a very nice intuitive piece sacrifice. You're hitting the rook. If the rook goes away, well, then black's plan here is to move the queen as well, and then you want to run with your two connected passed pawns. Well, objectively speaking, if white is precise here with a move like knight a3, protecting the rook, queen c6, and then rook b3, you're in control, you're hitting the pawn on b6, and objectively this should be good for white, probably just winning. But instead, there followed the move rook a to a3. Now the rooks are connected along the third rank. And here, Hans, being down to 4 seconds, misses a golden opportunity to infiltrate with the queen. There is this idea to play the move queen f1 with checkmate. He missed it. Instead, went for the move queen c6, which was his original idea. Rook to b3, knight d7, protecting the pawn. And after bishop f3, now black is moving in the center with its pawns, hitting the bishop. Now, if the bishop goes away, black is going to support it. And well, this is far from clear. You're a piece down, but it's not obvious what white's pieces are going to do next. So Hikaru, such a gifted tactician, goes for this insane idea. Knight takes d4, hitting the queen and opening up the diagonal for the queen to take the pawn on e4. So hitting the queen, queen takes e4, bishop takes a8, rook takes a8. Now the situation has changed. Black is an exchange down, has one pawn for it, but the white rooks are strangely connected. Queen d3, offering the exchange of queens, queen d5, queen f3. Now black goes for the exchange of queens. Very interesting. Now the knight will come to c5, hits the pawn on a4, but most importantly, there is this pawn on d4. Bishop to g1, rook d8, supporting the pawn, but white goes for the move a5. Very interesting idea, and objectively, you can just take it, and then probably it should peter out till a draw. Like if you go d3, the knight is hanging. If you take it, then it's d2, but the pawn is unstoppable. The only thing you can do is to go back, allow black to promote a pawn, and then it's an equal endgame. But Hans is playing for the win, and probably no time to calculate this at all. Just played here the move d3. So he plays it immediately, and this is a big moment always in chess, is should you continue with the original plan of taking the pawn on b6 or taking on c5, or should you neutralize the threat first? Well, the strongest move is rook to f1, so that after d2, you block the pawn with your rook, and black's pieces are not strong enough to support this pawn, and white is going to break through with the pawn on the queen side. This is winning for white, but instead there followed bishop takes c5. If you take it back, there's rook takes d3, black is just completely lost. So Hans went here for the move d2, threatening to promote the d pawn. This is a big moment because you have to stop, but how to do it? Well, Hikaru played here this move, rook a to d3, but probably it's better to use the other rook so that this rook on a3 is still supporting the advance of the a pawn. This is very complicated. Let's see what happened first. Rook a d3, pawn takes c5, and well, the d pawn is still very strong. Now after rook takes d8, as bishop takes d8, Still, you're threatening to promote. And if you play here something like rook to d3, it's bishop takes a5. This is a big difference. Now the bishop protects the pawn. If you try to come over with the king, then it's c4, attacking the rook, c3, and c2 is next. And the check on d7, the king just goes away. This doesn't make a difference. Black is winning here. So white cannot play rook d3. Instead, they follow the move a6. But now after d1 queen, black is just first. And the rook is about to be taken as well, or it's going to be checkmate. An absolutely insane, dramatic end of the game. But, well, it all happened with just 4 seconds on the clock for Hans Niemann. He decided to go for this very speculative piece sacrifice, which is objectively speaking not good. But this is how you can win blitz games, trying to seize the initiative, pose some practical problems for your opponent, and then it may work out as well. Well, fascinating stuff. Let me know in the comments what you think of this game. And of course, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. See you soon.